Greetings all, this is Hairy Nick. We're back on the X-Wing 2nd edition page for the FFG website because we have a new article out today which just goes to further explain some of the new rules for X-Wing 2nd edition. It also gives us a nice handful of new spoilers. Now, the rules being explained here is nothing new to everyone who's been following the various streams and conversations and podcasts and stuff. But look, while I'm here, let's have a chat about it. Why not? We have it all laid out in front of us. It's worth having a chat about these because action in X-Wing 2nd edition is going to be sort of fundamentally changed from the way we thought about them in X-Wing 1st edition. Mainly because we no longer have the card Push the Limit. This is very significant, and in 1st edition, basically Push the Limit meant any ship with an EPT could take multiple actions. And every ship had a pilot with an EPT. And it basically meant that FFG had to be very conservative with the action bar on pretty much every ship. Every ship was able to take multiple actions on their action bar in any order, in any turn, as long as that ship wasn't stressed. And that led to sort of design space being moved a bit into a corner. Now, this sort of is represented in the newer game, and I'll explain that in a tick. First of all, let's talk about how actions work. As you can see here with the example of Dutch Vandaar, ships have the action bar like they used to have, except now they have the potential to take red action. Basically, this represents extra difficult actions that the ship can take, but the ship still has access to them. Like barrel roll. Barrel roll was always what I considered a nice powerful ability on a Y-Wing, but if it's red, it means you have to take a stress token after you do the action, and that somewhat balances out in my mind. Also, the reload action is also present here. The Y-Wing isn't primarily an ordnance carrying platform. It can take bombs and missiles, yes, but it also has turrets. So it's a bit more versatile than something that's all in on the reload plan. Oh, and by the way, I should mention, yes, it has been confirmed that Y-Wing can take bombs, and it also has been confirmed that bombs can be reloaded just like missiles and torps. In the 1st edition version of the game, reload only replenished missiles and torps. So that's another change that's happened here, and I think it's a good one. I think reload's going to be a useful thing for bombers to be able to take. But also, if we scroll down the page here to Old Terok, which actually is a new reveal as well, we'll talk about those in a tick, we can see what's called linked actions. And that's when you have the white action with an arrow pointing at the red action here on the action bar. And this is where the design of Push the Limits has entered into 2nd edition, but it's been downgraded massively. You can no longer take any action on your action bar followed by any other action on your action bar and taking a stress. You now can only do it with certain actions. You can take a red focus, meaning you can take an extra action that's a focus and take a stress, but it can only occur after a barrel roll or boost. In fact, what's really significant about this is the fact that Protectorate Starfighter cannot boost barrel roll or barrel roll boost anymore. This was always one of the most powerful things Push the Limits could do. And I think it's a good thing because now the only ship that can boost barrel roll or barrel roll boost in either order is the TIE Interceptor. And really, if we take a look at the TIE Interceptor, it relies on that spiky style of gameplay. It's got no shields, not a lot of hull, 3 green dice, and this ship was always about the double positioning, and when things like the Protectorate Starfighter, the TIE Advanced prototype came along, it kind of stole its thunder a bit. Also worth noting, the new A-Wing can also do this, but only with boosts. So it can take any actions. It can barrel roll then boost, but only in that particular order. And because as far as we know, there is no new talent cards that allow ships to just take other actions willy-nilly like Push the Limits used to, it means there's a lot more breathing room in the design of these action bars. Indeed, a lot of ships seem to have a lot more actions than they used to. Just have a look at the TIE Defender. It has this whole gamut of actions, but now there's no risk of being able to take Push the Limits and really up the power level of these actions, which I think is a really strong move. Making sure that these ships can only take one action per turn means you can give them a lot of action, and sure, they're powerful, but they're not going to combo with other actions and really push the power of these actions way, way too far. And overall, I think that is a strong move. Okay, let's jump into the spoilers for this article and back to Old Terok. At the start of the engagement phase, you may choose one enemy ship at range 1. If you do and you are in its forward firing arc, you may remove all its green tokens. And this is pretty much a functional reprint of the old Terok, if that makes any sense. It used to only remove focus and evade tokens. Don't forget that this will also hit calculation tokens, but calculation tokens are basically focus tokens, so functionally this is a reprint of the old one. It's at initiative 5, which is really, really good for this pilot. The old version was at pilot skill 7, and pilot skill 7 sits in a weird kind of place for the 2nd edition initiative. Because Pilot School 7 could arguably translate into Initiative 4, but I think with these guys that are trying to be ace platforms, they're going to gravitate towards Initiative 5, which is really good. There are a lot of really good relevant pilots at Initiative 5 at the moment, particularly in the Scum faction, and I think old Terok, in the situations where he's up against a lot of Initiative 5s, he's going to shine. Also, we had revealed in this article R3 Astromech, which is part of the Astromech slot, which can be fielded on either the Rebel or the Scum faction, so long as it has that slot. You may maintain up to 2 locks. Each lock must be on a different object. After you perform a target lock action, you may acquire a lock. And just before we move on, it says different object because target locks can now hit enemy ships, friendly ships, and obstacles. So object is a nice term that encapsulates all of those. And this is really cool. This is basically a functional reprint of Weapons Engineer. Obviously, Weapons Engineer was only talking about ships, but that was an environment where you couldn't target lock asteroids, so it makes perfect sense. For the sake of in-game function, this is a functional reprint of Weapons Engineer, and it's in the Astromech slot now instead of the crew. And basically that means unless there's some kind of radical change, the Empire will not have access to this. So it's worth keeping an eye out. Basically, Weapons Engineer was always this card that was reliant on certain combos. It was never really good enough value-wise to just be taken on a ship with crew. There is value in having 2 target locks. It means you can choose where your torpedoes or missiles go, or you can choose 2 different targets that you might attack during that turn. But it was never really worth 3 points in the crew slot. So with the environmental change of X-Wing 2nd Edition, it's worth keeping an eye out, because if that's still the case, we're really going to have to consider what kind of combos that works with. We also had revealed here Expert Handling, which is a new talent card. Now this has been previously spoiled, but it is worth talking about this because talent upgrades overall seem to have been dialed back a little bit, which I think is probably a good thing for the game. Gets a nice even keel for the game to start out with, and it means that there's no crazy combos with pilot abilities and EPTs, or talents in this case. And I like the design behind this. It basically just turns your red barrel rolls into white barrel rolls. A common thing we're seeing, in case you guys aren't aware, this is the same deal with engine upgrades. Engine upgrades now turns a red boost into a white boost. That's in the modification slot instead of the talent slot. And in terms of use of the talent slot, I think this is going to come down to points. I can't see changing the color of an action being too impactful. And last but not least for this article, we also had revealed R5D8, which is a Rebel-only Astromech. Action is spend 1 charge to repair 1 face-down damage card. Action, repair 1 face-up ship damage card, and it comes with 3 charges. Now, the terminology with repair is interesting. Now, on the offset, it looks like both repair means discard. But it looks like from the way the article's talking, repairing a face-up damage card just means flipping it face down, which means you'd have to spend 2 separate actions to get a critical damage completely off your ship. 1 action to flip it face down with the charge, and 1 more action afterwards to get rid of it. Which seems fair. I like this card a lot. Using 1 action to repair 1 point of damage seems really potent. And in the instance that you have to flip a critical hit face down because it's really wrecking your ship, that's going to feel pretty good too. Although I will say the face-up damage cards overall do seem to be a bit dialed back in X-Wing 2nd Edition, so that action may not feel as potent as it once would have. But nevertheless, having choice is good. And compared to the old version of R5D8, which gave you a 5 in 8 chance of it working, this feels really solid. It feels like a nice solid upgrade, but it does have to interact with damage cards, so it's not infinite regen that you can just use every turn. You do have to have damage on your ship, which feels fair to me. One more card I want to talk about, which appeared in an article last week, but as it was the only spoiler from that article, I chose not to make a video on it, is the new version of Predator. And I actually had a chat to you guys on Facebook about this because I really like the design behind this, and indeed all of the other aggressive talent upgrades we've seen so far, because it only interacts with ships inside your bullseye firing arc. Now, yes, of course, it's worth pointing out that it does seem on the face of it to be a much lower power level version of the original Predator. There is simply no way to get 2 rerolls instead of 1, but I think that's okay. Remember, we don't have costings for these, so it could cost significantly less to counterbalance that. But more to the point, I really like that these new talents that are interacting with your opponent on an offensive level only work inside the bullseye firing arc. It's about rewarding good flying, and I think that's what the game should be about. Yes, that means that overall they're potentially a bit less powerful, but that can be fixed with costing. especially the new marksmanship. I'm really looking forward to having a play around with this card, especially with ships that can interact with crits. And we know now that the new version of Bosk is a functional reprint of the old version, so this might be very interesting with him. And even though, yes, this is about symbiotic list building, it still relies on good flying, which I like to see. This is definitely the direction I want the game to head in, and it seems to be the direction the devs want it to head in too, so that's really, really cool to see. In any case, guys, that's all the new stuff we've seen from these last 2 articles. Looks really cool. Hopefully we're going to get 1 article a week. Basically, with the amount of content they're going to release in September, they're pretty much going to have to put an article out a week unless they have massive, massive dumps of information. But we'll see what happens there. We still have the rest of the analysis videos I've got to make for the FFG unboxing. The Scum video will be posted up after this one, but in the meantime, guys, thank you so much for watching. Like and subscribe, like me on Facebook, follow me on Twitter, and I will catch you guys later.